Get to Deirdre Bose, obviously, who covers these companies closely. She's in San Francisco. Deirdre, thoughts?
So I'm hearing two things in the tech community, two major advantages for Wiz itself. One is that this is a cloud-native cybersecurity company. So unlike a Palo Alto that's been around for decades, it doesn't have to sort of upgrade legacy systems. It started from the ground up to serve the cloud. And that's a big reason why it has been such a darling of the venture capital world.
So this is a big deal that a lot of people don't think about when you think of businesses, especially ones that are like big and old. A lot of times they're big and old and they're relying on really ancient infrastructure. The other thing that people don't realize is how different infrastructure was pre-cloud versus like pre-mature enterprise grade cloud versus having to have your own server, having to host, having to do all of these things, and just the inherent infrastructure that went around supporting your own product versus having something that's cloud-based, highly scalable, highly distributable, highly integratable, right? All of these things. The ability to scale, sometimes it comes down to how the formation was. For example, I have a friend that's in the payments business, and when I asked her, because again, payments is so competitive, there's so many people that do it, I said, hey, respectfully, can I just ask, like, how do you win against Stripe? Like, how do you win against these people? And her response, I loved. It was this answer. It was, from the ground up is very different than ours. So in order for them to compete with us, fundamentally, they'd have to go fix and change and adjust most of their core infrastructure, which doesn't make any sense. And our clients, the ones that we're targeting, they can't use Stripe or they struggle with Stripe because of their core infrastructure. So we have a whole market that the premise is we're able to deliver and make a more efficient way for you to utilize the features that you already want to use, right? They weren't reinventing the wheel. They were just making a wheel that was better fit for this car, let's say.
It has investment from Sequoia, Andreessen Horowitz, last raised at a $12 billion valuation. Obviously, what Google's buying it for represents more than double that. So a high price tag.
Here's a quick thing on valuation, which I always think is fun. Remember, the valuations that are set during rounds of raising investment capital for startups, the investors are trying to push it up and down. Sometimes they want it up because they want it to look a certain way. Often they're trying to push it down, so they obviously get a better deal, which makes sense, fair enough. But there's so much that goes into the valuation isn't real until it actually exits. And even then, the valuation is more comprised off of all of the revenue, cash, sales, the KPIs that you extract from it. As an example, if Wiz was valued at 12 million and then it went on to generate, or 12 billion, and it went on to generate, 12 billion a year in revenue, well, clearly it's worth more than 12 billion at that stage, and you can adjust the valuation and life's good. But if Wiz went and reinvested all that capital, that 12, let's say they raised $1 billion at a 12 billion valuation, if they go reinvest all that capital and sales slow, or adoption isn't as good, or another competitor comes up, well, now that $12 billion valuation, maybe it's flat, maybe it's up a little, or maybe worse, it goes down, and then you have to do a down round where you raise money at a lower valuation than your previous round. So when I look at Google buying it and they're like, oh yeah, it's a huge premium, obviously, compared to their last round, there's a lot of questions that come to mind for me, which is, okay, well, Google's buying the whole thing. They're buying control. Control has a premium. Means, hey, if we can't have the business, if we're buying all the ownership of the business from you, we have to pay the premium that you lose the right to say something in your own business. If we buy 49%, we still own the business at the valuation, but ultimately you're in control. But if Google buys the business and they own 51%, they're in control. That control premium is very, very real. The second piece is, remember, Google has an infrastructure. they're not operating independently like a Wiz is, as far as Google has so many places that they can, will, and I'm sure will continue to plug that company in and benefit from it across a vast amount of their business infrastructure. Everything from improving their own internal security in certain areas, I'm sure, to definitely improving the security and ability for their customers to really benefit from the software. So when I look at it and go, is it really worth $44 billion? My question is very simple. Will Google get at least $44 billion of value from it? And I think the answer is pretty clearly yes, which means to them it was a premium. And definitely it was a big buy for Google, and there's all this media and stuff. But when you look at it from an ROI basis, it may have actually been cheap.
The second big advantage, and this was very clear on the webcast that Google held this morning, is that Wiz is multi-cloud. They said multi-cloud or multiple cloud 12 times on that 20-minute podcast. Webcast this morning. And what that means is that Wiz works across all the hyperscalers, and it's popular on.
This is a really big one. Which cloud you build on? You know, we never left the Xbox, PC, PlayStation, console wars. We're still there. We're just old now. That's the difference. And now instead of Xbox, well, it's still Xbox. It's fucking Microsoft. And instead of PlayStation, it's Amazon, and you've got Google, and you've got Oracle. You've got all of these different cloud infrastructures, and what a surprise. They don't all talk nice to each other. They don't all play well. 1980s infrastructure to, oh, now we have this new modern cloud infrastructure is... ding, ding, ding. Now we have this modern multi-cloud infrastructure. So no matter who you are or where you are or how your business is, we can integrate with you. Because remember, this is cybersecurity. So they're working with companies that deal with, that are benefiting from the cybersecurity in that way. They've probably built their systems or have their internal systems reliant on one of these cloud providers. Well, if they want to integrate the benefits of Wiz and they're on a different solution and Wiz can't, connect, it's basically like being an American in Europe with a normal, plug for your phone. It's like you need the adapter. Well, if the adapter comes pre-installed, very compelling. Very compelling.
Microsoft's Azure, Amazon's AWS, and Google Cloud. Now, Google is saying that it's going to remain multi-cloud, and that's going to remain a big advantage. But guys, I also want to raise the idea that this could be advantage in getting it through the regulatory approvals needed for this deal to go through. The fact that it's multi-cloud means that there's less lock-in by Google. So, you couldn't make the same kind of monopoly or antitrust arguments that are obviously being made against Google in some of its other more larger business units. So that could be an advantage here. But that idea, though, that the hyperscalers are now going to be using a cybersecurity company that is owned by Google, that could actually hurt Wiz in the longer term. They may back away, and that could open up the market for other cloud-native cybersecurity players. So those are kind of the two main points that I'm hearing. Also, I can't stress enough how quickly Wiz has grown. I think it's about 5 years old. Like I said, it was cloud-native, and the growth has just been remarkable. It's growing at more than double in terms of cloud annual recurring revenue, more than double that of Palo Alto. It's rivaling CrowdStrike, and I'm told that they're aiming for $1 billion in ARR this year. That would represent a doubling from its ARR the previous year.
No question, it's been a darling, and clearly that's why Google wants it. I think that the antitrust question that I was going to raise less has to do with the Wiz and more what the DOJ's plans are for Google and whether they intend to pick up the sort of aggressive position of the Biden administration, looking into whether it's a monopoly and whether that factors in here, whether they're going to be allowed to buy another $30 billion
Monopoly is a gray area, and everybody knows it.
A major question. I would actually say that this regulatory overhang fits into the price-to-earnings multiple, the Google valuation, just as much, maybe more than the capital allocation. And it's a good question. There's some nuances. We're all trying to read the tea leaves, see what might be different from the Trump administration from the Biden administration. And we know that the DOJ is going ahead. They still want to break up Google. They wanted to separate its Chrome browser from the major business, which would be a huge hit, not just to the business, but to, Google's overall generative AI strategy. When it comes to stakes in AI companies, and this was a key nuance, the DOJ actually dropped that request from its list of things that they wanted to see changed through this lawsuit. And maybe that provides an opening. I mean, on the call this morning, that webcast, the Google team mentioned that the pace and impact of breaches are accelerating. AI brings new risks, but also new opportunities. At the same time, multi-cloud and hybrid, they're becoming the norm. So the DOJ is softening its stance a little bit on the stakes that Google holds in AI companies like Anthropic. Maybe there's a chance that they would look at this a little bit differently. And I spoke to someone close to the deal who said that they were, confident, as you would expect, that this could get through.
Yeah, I'm sure
they definitely wouldn't be doing it
with
if they weren't
that
confident.
notion for sure, Deirdre. Thank you very much.